All right, so good afternoon, good morning, no matter where it is you're tuning in from. This is Founders Take, and I am your host, Brian Antolin, the program manager at Line Run. So happy to have all of you here, and we have an incredible startup that we're featuring and getting to know today, Anu. And we have the two co-founders from Manu joining us and to share a little bit about their experiences and the lessons they've learned regarding trust, community, and referrals. So we have Tiyani Majoko and Max Wulff here with us. So great to have you guys.
Thank you,
Awesome here.
Brian. Great to be here. Great to meet your community. Hi, everybody who is listening. I would really appreciate the opportunity and thank you for your time.
Definitely. And as I recall, Tiana, you said that this is Max's first time on a podcast and an event like this. Is that correct, Max?
That is correct.
Oh man, so happy that your first experiences with us, and I promise we're going to take care of it.
Okay,
So, with that, love to get started, dive right in. Tiani, Max, would love to learn more about Anu and how this idea, this concept came about, and what problem you were looking to solve in the process.
Well, again, Brian, thank you so much for the opportunity. We're really excited to be here and to talk about Anu and what we've been doing over the last 6 months. We're really excited about our progress and ultimately how we started. So I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing law for 10 years now, and I'm from South Africa, which is where my accent, which does not sound American, comes from. And in that process, I've worked in big law. I worked as in-house counsel in an oil and gas company. And then 5 years ago, I started my own legal consulting firm back home in Johannesburg. And in that process, I was working with small businesses. So in South Africa, we don't really have a big market of startups the way that you do here in the US. And for us, it's mostly a number of small businesses. And even in that process, it was so hard for those small businesses to get access to really good quality legal services. And that's the pain point that was the target market we were trying to reach and finding them through various incubator programs and so forth. But then I began to realize that our systems are very manual, and I started to think of how can we bring more technology into our space. And then I applied to Cornell Tech to come and do my LLM, a master's in law, with a focus on technology, law, and entrepreneurship. And in that process, that's how I then met Max and we started to work together. And I'll let him also give his background. But in terms of how we chose this specific problem, I looked at my experience in South Africa and then looking at the startup world here in the US as well, the challenge of under networked startups to be able to access high quality professional services is a really big challenge. And basically, the more networked you are, the better network, the higher the network you belong to, the easier access you have to free resources, high quality resources, deferred fee arrangements, and so forth. Whereas that's not the reality for almost like 99% of startups. So it's thinking, how can we make those resources more easily available and attainable for less networked startups, but at the same time, for professionals on the other end that work with startups, how can we make sure that we maintain a level of quality that they are accustomed to, that normally comes by virtue of these referral networks that they belong to. So it's like, how can we make the process more scalable, yet also ensuring quality and maintaining that trust that you normally find in your traditional referral networks.
Mm-hmm. And just to touch briefly on my background, so I'm a data scientist, mostly in manufacturing in the past, and in these specific prior work arrangements, I was really working on deploying big data solutions on assembly lines, and just seeing how much even small technology improvements can make these processes just so much better, so much more scalable was really cool. And that's what I was really excited to do when I came to Cornell Tech to do my master's in data science and really build on those skills. So talking to Tiyani, talking about the space, seeing how much of an analog process these traditional referrals have been in the past, and seeing how even just a little bit of technology can make this process a lot better. So that's what I was excited to really do with Anu.
And it's really amazing that you both met in a college setting. And we've spoke about this before, my connection with Cornell Tech and my previous employer, Bloomberg, and how all of that worked. But it's really amazing how a campus setting provides this really serendipitous opportunity for people to get together and not just to learn from each other, but in the case of you both, really collaborate together and build something out that helps people. So I think that's really amazing. And going into this, especially since Tiyani, you come from a legal background, and Max, you come from more of a data and a tech background. What was your view of entrepreneurship going into starting this venture together? And Max, I think we'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, entrepreneurship for me was basically just the Wild West. I I didn't know much about it going in at all. You watch the movies, you watch The Social Network, you hear about the stories like, Theranos and all these other big names. But what you really don't get a sense of is all the smaller entrepreneur stories. So, like everything you see prior, everything you really think about when you hear entrepreneurship is that basically 1% of entrepreneurs that Tiyani was referring to in the past, where you see, the people who get $10 million when they're 22 to build their companies, but that's just not the reality of the situation for most people. And coming in, that's something that I really started to realize, starting to go down this route, is that the entrepreneurship is really defined by people, working really hard, making sacrifices, and and trying their best to build up these networks. And that's really given that realization, that's where I personally was really excited to really focus on the people who are struggling more, the people who may not have the best networks to get the best professional services right off the bat. And that's why I personally was also really excited to work in this space.
I think into my view is, because I was an entrepreneur before I came to the US, I think I'll speak about my view of entrepreneurship in America specifically, because it was informed again, by maybe not The Social Network, but by listening to lots of podcasts, like Masters of Scale by Reid Hoffman, the Tim Ferriss Show, How I Built This by Guy Raz, and just those types of podcasts, and where it, not that they make it seem super easy, but they make it seem not as hard as it actually in reality is. And so that's what, fueled my view of entrepreneurship in America. It's like, okay, you have an idea, you find, you get into YC, you, you raise $10 million, then you raise another $40 million, then your company's valued at $1 billion, and then you sell to Google and you sail off into the sunset. But again, when I got onto the ground and started doing the work, you quickly realize that everything that Max said, that's not everybody's story. That's not, everybody's journey, from, the challenges of fundraising, the challenges of finding partnerships, the challenges of, hiring and building a team, the challenge of just prioritizing, like, what are the important things for us to do when. So it was, I had a very naive view, and to an extent, I'm really grateful that I had that like sense of just being very naive about what was actually needed. Because if I had like a real view, I don't know if I'd have actually begun.
For the most part, people try to, glamorize entrepreneurship and really focus on the wins, whereas 98% of the time, it does not even remotely come close to that. So I think it's really important. And one of the reasons why we came up with this type of format and this series was to really showcase, entrepreneurs, founders, or even people who have a side hustle. It's a grind. It's a lot of hard work. There are a lot of challenges in the way. But if you can take all of those losses, extract all the lessons, you can build yourself a win. And I think that's what I've seen from you guys is really taking that really analog process of that painstaking process, really, if you think about it, of the referrals, and try to, you know, bring it to and relate it to how we are working in today's economy. I think that's definitely something to really shout about, and to really highlight and spotlight. So kudos to you both
Thank
for
you.
taking on that challenge. You know, as you were going about starting this idea and putting the pieces together, what was the first piece of advice, or the first couple things that you were able to get from potential mentors or advisors on how to go about doing this, since it's a really difficult problem to tackle and a lot of people really have shied away from it? What was that advice that you got in the early days as you were starting?
So fortunately, we came out of, well, you're familiar with the Cornell Tech program. So we were in the, we would do these sprints, was it max, like what, every 4 weeks, every month,
Every few
every
weeks.
6 weeks, pretty much. We would do a sprint where then we would get, feedback from different people and, different just different people that are in various spaces in tech, either they're founders themselves, they're employed at Google, or not big tech, or they are investors. And so we're in that constant feedback loop. And I think probably for me, the most useful feedback that that really helped me, set up my mind around, what we wanted to do, was to when we pitched like really the first version of what Anu was, which was right at the start, which was like a risk management tool, where it was like a quiz that startups would go through, and then we would highlight to them basically like on a red, orange, green, in terms of compliance with various things, like where are you in various aspects of your operation, and what is the biggest risk that you're carrying in your startup right now. So that was that was like the first iteration of this. And then we spoke with the person that was, running Startup Studio, and he was like, are you going to, like, once the startup gets that report, are you going to give them like the legal services for them to fix what's gone wrong? And it was like, no. Well, then it's like, if we're not doing that, then you're just like compounding and adding problems, but not providing an actual solution for the problem. So that really got me in that mindset of thinking about, okay, we need to, give someone a solution that helps them move from point A to point B. It doesn't help to point out an issue if you're also not going to like help them close that loop. And that was for me like that first, taste of having that, problem solving mindset, and really customer driven mindset, as opposed to thinking, well, this is like what we would like to make. But then it got me thinking, what would customers actually appreciate and respond well to? And also it helped us to start to get thinking about the revenue model really early. So another thing that we did was that we had our pilot. Then in June, we went through a really big fundraising process. And in that, although we weren't able to raise any money, but we were then able to understand really, really early, which was like super early, like 2 months into a startup, we now know what metrics and what things investors are looking for. So that was another piece of feedback. It was, really hard, obviously, to not get the expected outcome, but the lesson of learning, you now know basically what you need to show a VC investor for them to be interested in a product. And that's something that we got that learning super, super early. And it was just so beneficial. I'll let Max speak about his own biggest piece of feedback so far.
Sure. Yeah, one of the most important and like I guess just enlightening pieces of advice we got, I can't remember who gave it to us, but was just how important it is to just make a 10 out of 10 knockout experience for your early customers. So your early customers will make or break a product, and be the difference between stopping at a very early stage or being able to grow something awesome. So, and just how important and how important it is to have your early customers be your champions. So that's why everything that we do, everything that we're really focused on at this point, any improvements that I make on the technology side are all really focused on just making that amazing experience for the people who use it on both sides of our platform. So for the professionals and both for the customers. And in that vein too, it's also really important, and something that we take really seriously is just getting feedback and really having a consistent feedback loop. So always talking to the people who use our platform about, you know, what was good, what was bad, and making little changes along the way, and just making sure that whoever is using our platform at the time, whoever is a part of it, just making sure that they have an amazing 10 out of 10 experience with us, and that they just walk away smiling and walk away happy. And that has really been the guiding principle, at least from the technology side, that I've really liked to focus on early on.
I love that approach, Max, and especially when you are looking to incorporate that feedback and really try to understand what your customers need and also what they're saying, and adapting accordingly. And connecting it to our event theme today about building trust in your community and then activating it. I find that you guys are really in an interesting space because you're not only trying to build out and gain trust of your customer community, but you're also trying to help both sides build trust and activate their communities on their ends. So it's one issue, but approaching it three different ways. So I'd love to know from both of you, how are you really tackling that one core issue of trust and community? And how does that really translate to essentially your business model? So how have you been able to really look at trust and community for both sides of the platform, but then also bring it back and apply it to you?
Mm-hmm.
That's a great question, Brian. So the way that we are, I'll approach it from kind of the two sides and then bring it back in. And then Max can also speak to what he's doing from the technology side. I have experiences on both sides of the coin as a founder and as a lawyer. So being able to speak with lawyers about what some of their concerns are with, using a platform, an online tool to be able to find, the clients that they want. So being able to build up that trust and have that dialogue and have that, understand their concerns, understand the regulatory issues. Those are ways, first of all, just showing competence. That's been very, very important. Showing competence to our legal providers. That's what they want to see, that you understand the regulatory environment that they operate in, that you understand their the way that they make money and what matters to them, from a bottom line perspective, and then being able to show that you have the ability to, balance and meet their needs in those ways. Then from the startup side, understanding, their financial sensitivities, because, that's very real. And also understanding, just being able to communicate that you have the capacity to, find means to, whether it's we negotiate pricing packages on your behalf with the lawyers that we work with, so that you are able to, get the service that you need at a rate that's affordable to you. Understanding their concerns as well, some.
Hello?
Oh, did I break out again? Hello?
Tiyani, I think we're okay, so you can keep
Okay,
going.
are we okay? Thank you. Sorry about that. So showing the startups that, we have the capacity to negotiate on your behalf, and we understand your concerns. We understand your own, issues, like the fact that you don't have a lot of resources. And then another thing is that we know that, you want to work on your business. So our thing is we want you to stop searching and to start choosing. Stop searching on Google and asking your aunt and your best friend to make this introduction and make this referral for you. Come onto our platform, and then we will make it a hassle-free exercise on their part. And also, having that affinity for the communities that they trust, and building trust in the communities that the startups trust. So the startups trust incubators, the startups trust their, accelerator programs. They trust their academic institutions that they're learning in. So if we are able to, get that vetting and that like stamp of approval from communities that they are already inherently involved in, then that gives, that's like that second, that passes trust on to us as well. So that's the way that we've been thinking about it from, the both sides in developing and building that trust in those communities individually. And then the way that we bring it together onto our platform is just really focusing on being as transparent as possible on both ends. So because we know financial issues or financial concerns for startups, we show them the pricing when they're going through the process. And because we know lawyers want to, do a good job and to appear competent when they speak to the startups, we give them a really detailed introduction about the startup so that they can also prepare properly. So that when they both meet together, let them, they mustn't be unanswered, things in the air, but rather as much information as we can provide to both of them that addresses each of their separate concerns is available so that they can meet, communicate, and rather figure out like if this is, something that they want to do together, but not because of, let something else be the issue, not that we weren't able to address like, the core things that they're both looking for. And how that then translates to our business model is that because we provide all of this to the legal professionals that are, right now with COVID, aren't able to, participate in in-person events where they normally find clients and networking and all of these types of things, that if they do, and they might not have like, a robust digital strategy, we are then able to help them fill that gap, and we provide them with really high quality leads that then lead to fee earning opportunities for them. So that's what we then do. We then, charge our law firm partners are the ones that then pay us a subscription fee on a monthly basis for us to continue providing them those high quality leads. And then with our startups, our aim is what we do with them is that we charge them according to the level of customization that they require. So if you want the Amazon Prime experience on our platform, then you can pay for faster customization, more matches than one, and so forth. So even though that we price is in accordance with what each party needs as well.
Mm-hmm. And I could touch a little bit on how we're using technology to really increase trust within the process as well. So the referral networks that we're really trying to disrupt are built on trust, right? So when you get when your colleague refers a client to you, you trust that your colleague will provide you that the person coming through is vetted and pre-vetted and gets like the stamp of approval from the colleague, from somebody within your professional network. And since what we're trying to do is really disrupt these traditional networks, and then all of a sudden that familiarity, that stamp of approval, that like label of trust starts to degrade a little bit. So to bring that, and what's really important for us is that even though that we're getting rid of like that personal trust, we still want to maintain that same level of trust that you would get from somebody within your professional network. So the way we want to do that really is through technology. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is because technology is scalable. So once we grow a business to scale, we don't have to be the ones, who are personally providing that stamp of approval by going through everybody individually. And instead we're able to rely on technology to do it. And two is because of human bias. So when you meet somebody for the first time, you automatically inherently have human biases. And that's not a negative. That's just, that's just the way we're hardwired to think. And these human biases can be beneficial, but they can also hurt people as well. So by introducing technology, we can start to remove a little bit of the inherent human biases that come with meeting somebody for the first time. And to talk a little specifically about what we do is, so the vetting, we have a primary vetting mechanism that's really geared towards getting an understanding of how committed somebody is to their idea, how excited they are about their idea, and basically, are they serious about their needs? Because these are the three pillars that we really, when talking to the lawyers and the professionals that we work with, these are the three pillars that they really care about the most when they're meeting somebody new. So I was able to develop two neurolinguistic models that help us make this determination. They're based on basically a pre-written statement that we ask for as part of our intake process, where the potential clients come in, they tell us about themselves in their own words, which we have that very specifically because we want to get a more nuanced understanding of who the client is. So then we run the neurolinguistic models on top of that, get a determination from a technology basis on basically their level of excitement and commitment, and then use that to pass to make a determination if they're ready to talk to one of our clients. And what's important there on the bias standpoint is that our primary vetting mechanism isn't based on your level of education, how much money do you have in the bank, like, what's your background. It's purely based on what's your commitment to your idea. Are you ready to, or are you determined and serious and at the point where you're ready to basically need legal services?
It's amazing that, and you both said this in very different ways, that essentially what you guys are doing is digitizing the trust process for small businesses and startups, which is just mind-blowing if you think about it, because you're bringing such a human behavior on and a human action online. And I'm sure that in the process of you both really bringing this really incredible vision, and I've told you both this before, to life, I'm sure that there have been a lot of missteps and a lot of assumptions that have gone haywire. And if you had to choose one specific one, that an assumption or a challenge or an outright mistake that you made in this process of really bringing referrals and ultimately digitizing trust to your community and to your platform, what is that, and what was that, and how did it really affect your trajectory long term? How were you able to recover?
I can touch on this first. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So actually, one of the biggest things that has been one of my biggest considerations is in this digitization of trust, as you call it, as we like to say. Like we talk a lot about removing human bias, but what was really kind of out of my periphery and until I really started going this process is actually how much bias is within technology itself. And I'm actually writing an article about this right now that I'm excited to share. Hopefully, maybe by the time this is published, it'll be ready to go. But just realizing that technology itself has its own all host of biases when you deploy machine learning models to real world business scenarios. There's a lot you have to consider there. You have to considerations on where your data came from. Is it representative of everybody you want to look at? Especially because we're using language data as well. There's a whole host of biases that can be introduced in terms of like the way people speak, dialects, languages, and all these issues that come along with it. So really starting to, and really not realizing, I guess, from the onset, how important and how important it is to make this a central tenet of our business, and really addressing this, and basically just everything we do with technology, making sure that this is part of the conversation and bias is part of the conversation. So and I guess in our inception, this wasn't really part of my forethought, but now going forward, everything I do will have this in mind. So to give some specific examples of how we're starting to address it, rather, hopefully, is doing a lot of testing on the model itself. So basically seeing, asking people from different regions of the United States, different age groups, education levels, to basically go through our process and see how our own technology scores them differently, and then trying to address those biases. And then also secondly is, right now our technology isn't based on our own data sources. It's just we didn't have the capacity and we didn't have the data in our beginning to really build that up. So, and secondly, what I'm really excited to do is start to build our own data sources where we can then use that to train our own data. So, and then in the process of building data, be very cognizant about making sure that the data we bring in is representative of everybody that we're trying to help, is representative in terms of like where people are, what they're trying to do, and then really focus on the business sense that we're trying to use. So that's one of the biggest lessons and one of the biggest things I'm excited to start tackling in the future.
Tiyani, would love to hear from you as well on this, on issue that you might have run into in this whole process and how that's really affected your overall trajectory.
I think when it was something that we just discussed this morning with Max, it was and I wouldn't say, well, it was a mistake in some respect, but trying to not fall into the being labeled as legal tech, or trying to where we didn't pick a specific industry that we were that we said that we were ultimately a part of. That was something that we may have missed out on opportunities to connect with other startups that are in a similar space, as well as to access resources that are available for startups that are addressing for example legal tech. And this really came out of like just our own, to an extent, some type of insecurities that we had because of the experience of a different startup, Atrium, that had also been in this space, and just that constant comparison. So we felt like we were constantly in their shadow. And what they had a $65 million raised, and they had like a dream team of super experienced startup founders, and we were like, okay, we're in a similar space, and it's not, we don't do the exact same thing, but it's a similar space, and we need to be able to escape that comparison. So let's not say that we are legal tech and be something that's just be in the professional services industry. And by not taking on that label, we did, again, like I said, miss out on just like really good support and good networks that we could have had access to. And now that we are aware of this, we're starting to have those discussions with more people that are in the legal tech, founders, mentors, and so forth. And it's just felt so good to be able to speak with people that can relate to the types of challenges that we're going through. But however, on the flip side, not being a legal tech startup did also help us to think of use cases of our platform beyond legal. So now we can say legal is our beachhead, and we're moving into other professional services as well, like accounting, marketing, web design, web development, and even beyond those types of verticals, into helping people find a publisher if you're starting to write a book, or find a if you want to do a triathlete, it's going to be a triathlete, find a coach that's a professional who can help you get ready for that type of endeavor. But so now we can say we're helping people that are trying to start something new, anything new, because we were able to kind of get out of that box of just being legal tech. And now it's interesting, we went super wide, and now we're coming back in, but with the view of like going back wide again. But being able to get the right type of support this time around. So it's been both like a mistake, but it also has been an opportunity for us to really see the ways that we the growth opportunities that are available to us.
Definitely. And want to hone in on something you just mentioned, Tiyani, about identification and being able to really hone in on what a community brings, what you can contribute, and then ultimately how you can find that mutually beneficial cross connection. And if you talking about transition from mistakes to lessons learned now, if you had to just pick out one or two core lessons that you learned from jumping from one community and one pool of resources to another, and ultimately taking the best from the different pools and creating your own circle and building a community for your customers, what's that core lesson, and how does it really translate now to what we were talking about earlier with building trust with customers who are now paying and trusting you to help them?
Max, do you want to start first, or
Sure.
I'm happy. Okay.
Yeah, so in terms of just building the community, like the biggest thing that I'll always be a proponent of is just listening first. We can't be the ones who are telling our potential customers what they need. We have to be the listeners and react to what they want. And whether that's certain features on our platform, being able to build the community better, it's really just around, understanding the needs of the customers and being great listeners and always having them focus. I know I touched on that a little bit earlier, but that again has just been one of the most important factors and one of the most important lessons that we've learned around is just making that amazing experience for the people using our platform.
I think for me, it's, learning how to prioritize. That's been a very, very important thing, because if we have poor priorities, we're not going to be in a position to best serve either side of our platform. So learning how to prioritize what internally for ourselves. So what do we need to do and when? That's really been the hard thing. If you're a startup, you have such limited resources. There's so many things that you need to achieve. Some things realistic, some things unrealistic, and you deciding with what we have, what we need, where we are, what is the next best thing that we can do, because you have competing things. You have to fundraise, you have to, meet customers, you have to, find the startups, find the communities that they're in, or find, where they're sitting, whether it's like with digital marketing or that type of endeavor. You have to build out the tech, you have to find the attorneys and find the communities again that they trust as well. You have to think about your own personal well-being and so forth. So there are all of those competing elements, and you need to have that ability to decide, this is what's good for us now and this is what's not. And I think even in this last couple of weeks, we've been able to turn down certain opportunities and say, this is not a good fit for us, or this is not a good, priority for us at this point, and to go back to people and say, well, we can't participate in something right now, or, this has been a great conversation, but this community doesn't speak to what our legal partners are looking to do. And, being able to also learning how to say no. When you're a startup, you feel like anyone who's willing to talk to you is worth it. But I just also realized that, especially with the fundraising, like if a person takes those meetings and, you are able to have all those conversations, those people are also doing their job. So not to confuse interest for commitment. Those are two very, very different things, and learning how to get through that as quickly as possible.
Interest and commitment, they are two real cornerstones for any business and for any founder who is going into starting their own ventures. And I'm really glad you brought that up, Tiyani. Really great advice overall from both of you today, and I really appreciate you sharing that with our community and really being open and honest with the struggles and those challenges that you faced. And just looking at who we work with, which are primarily students and also entrepreneurs, and thinking about their journeys of starting something, whether it be a career or whether it be a venture. Let's treat everything as starting your own venture or your own project for this question. What single piece of advice would you give to someone starting a new project, a new venture, even if it's a new career, but treating it as a venture? What piece of advice would you give them based on the experiences you've learned from Anu?
I'm curious to hear from Max, because technically this is his first venture. And I'd like to hear what I'm always curious to learn from Max. So I'd like to hear from you, Max, first.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one thing that I was thinking about a lot when I was thinking about this question was just around setting short-term goals and doing I guess retrospectives once you reach those goals. So like when you look at something, it's starting a business, it's this huge, monstrous kind of endeavor you take. But what we've really found successful, especially early on, was just, having short-term goals, setting those goals, and then making that your focus. And once you start to break it up like that, then you can start to see forward progress every single week. And that was which was really important for me going forward, because it's nerve-wracking, right? You starting something like this, you lack stability, you don't have like a constant job, you don't know, it's always a question mark if you're going to be alive in the next month or two. But one thing that always kept me going was at the end of every week, I could look back and say, have we made forward progress since where we were on Monday? And by setting goals and trying to achieve those goals, the answer was always yes. And that was something that was really kept me going, especially early on when I was nervous about it, and when when it was hard was just, being able to look back every single week and saying, yes, I've made forward progress this week, even though it doesn't seem like you're moving forward a lot, even if you're able to see that progress, then that's what I thought was really important, and one thing that kept me going, especially when times were tougher.
I would say for me, just aligned with this discussion is get into community. Whether it's starting a business or starting up a career, if it's a career, community is mentors, other people that are at your level. You need your peer net. I think of mentorship or like community. You need your peers, people that are at the same level as you. You need like that that relationship with someone that's more senior than you, who has done it well, done it successfully. Even if they haven't done it successfully, there's still so much to learn from that type of person. And then also for you to be a person who's also giving back in some way, even if you're just like, someone who's just completed your first degree, and there are always, people like, whether it's high schoolers or whoever else that could benefit from your own perspective as well. So for you to constantly be in a space of community, whether it's, through mentorships or being in clubs or being in, like these accelerator programs or whatever it is. There's so many, even if it's like just a WhatsApp group, literally, or just like in a group text with friends, just be in community. You cannot do anything sustainable and successful on your own. That is impossible. So that's like my greatest win. All my success, all the things I've been able to accomplish have always been through virtue of community. And even, where we are today, Brian, being in community with you and the connections that you helped us, with as we were going and as we're still going, that's been, part of where some of the wins that we're speaking about today have come from. So for me, I'm an absolute believer of just being in community.
100%, 100%. I love the sentiments you both shared. And I truly believe that community is the root of all success. And that old adage, right? It takes a village to raise a baby. And whatever it is you're working on, whether it's a company, a project, a meetup group, your career, ultimately your success is not based on your ability on itself. It's you can bring a lot to the table, but ultimately you need a support system and an infrastructure to help raise you up. And I'm really happy that that's pretty much the core lesson I've heard from both of you. So really in line with what we believe in as well. We have one question from our audience, and I really think it's really apt for our discussion today. How do you find your community? And we mentioned community. If we had to have like a word tracker, maybe like 85 times in the past 40 some minutes, how do you find your community? How does that work? If we can give like a little step-by-step process or something, or what would you say in terms of how to create or find your own community? What would you do?
Okay, I can go first with this one. So, okay, I will give a framework because that's how my attorney brain likes to work. I like to break things down into something that's like accessible for anyone to be able to do on their own. So the first thing is, what is your goal? Like, what is the thing that you're trying to accomplish? Really be very clear about that. Whether it's starting a business or you're trying to, get into venture capital. Let's use that as the example. You are a person that's outside venture capital and you want to get into venture capital. So that's your goal. The goal is, I want to become a VC or I want to become an associate in a fund. So I would say once you are clear about your goal, look at people or companies that are doing that, that are in that space, like the top 10 companies, in that space. What are they, in your view? It doesn't have to be like the top 10 companies, like according to Forbes or, hello, I feel like everyone is frozen.
I can hear.
Okay. Yeah, so it's like, your top 10 companies, the companies that are most exciting to you. It doesn't have to be according to New York Times or anything, it's to you. Then use your LinkedIn, go on your LinkedIn. That's already a pre-set or pre-created community that you have access to. So create your LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn must always be up to date in everything that you're doing, so that it's easy, you know, for people to also identify what your interests are and where you are and the skills that you have. So you go on your LinkedIn, you select, you know, you look for those companies, and then you see, you know, if you have any common contacts. I believe, like, and you know, everyone is at least 6 degrees from separation from whoever it is that you want to meet. Like, I'm sure you've all heard that. So I like to mention that I am 2 degrees of separation from Beyonce, because that's very important for me too. Or I see, where am I doing better? Am I getting closer to Beyonce? That's very important. So everyone is like, you know, you're in your network, you'll begin to see if you have anyone that is affiliated with these funds in any way. And then you can begin to, if not, don't have a heart attack. We're living, like, you know, post COVID, the world has become so much smaller. People are open to cold calls. People are open to, you know, just, you know, you reaching out. And then sometimes there are like already pre-created communities that can help you get into that space. So there are meetups, for example. That's how you can also find community, by, you know, being on meetups, or, you know, reaching out to some of these people. Might not, if you are able to break into, you know, the goal of the place that you want to, that's fantastic. And then, you know, that becomes its own community on its own. If not, they can sometimes, you know, refer you to other resources and other places where you can then, you know, find where those conversations are happening, and then it'll give you access to that community. So really think about it in a very structured way. What is the goal that I have? You know, how am I putting myself in the best place to be attractive to people that are in that community or in that space already? And then what communities have already been pre-created around that space or whatever goal that I have? And how do I then find my way into that, into those communities, either by cold outreach or through warm introductions by people that I already know? But really think about it in a very structured and like in a very framework type of way, so that it doesn't feel like you'd have to get lucky, because luck is part of it, but not the only thing.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just reiterate 2 points that Tiyani really brought up. Was one, just being really hyper focused about what you want to get out of, you know, like, so have some goals and figure out how people can help you get there. And then the second is just really don't be afraid of a cold email. Well, that's another big thing I've learned, and a big way I've grown over the last, you know, working on this project was just, you know, being able to swallow my pride and just send that email out to somebody, because what's the worst that can happen, right? They don't respond. But, you know, some of the best people we've talked to have been cold emails from either myself or Tiyani, and that's been a really fortunate thing, is, you know, just have that confidence to just reach to somebody out of the blue.
Yeah, that's how we met Brian.
True.
Framework and confidence, it's a great formula for sure. And I believe that I'll add to what you both have said, you know, having the framework and having the confidence to reach out. And I'd say a reference point where, if you can do a little bit of homework before you reach out and say, I saw you talked at this, or I saw you wrote this, I saw you just posted this, and I wanted to reach out, it makes that cold email a little warm, where you increase your likelihood of that person responding, because you showed them respect, and you showed that you know, took a little bit of time to get to know them, even if it's just remotely.
Couldn't agree more. Yep.
All right, so you know, this is an amazing conversation, and Tiyani, Max, can't thank you both enough, and for sharing, you know, your journey to this point and the things that you learned in the process. It's really means a lot to me, and I'm sure it means a lot to the community, just to hear from your experiences. So thank you both very much.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Yeah.
And before we definitely, and before we log off, where can people go to learn more about Anu?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I'm just primarily by going to our website. It's goanu.co. So goanu.co. And then we love responding to emails too. So my email is just max@goanu.co. And then Tiyani is Tiyani@goanu.co. Should I write that somewhere, or
I'll send it out.
Awesome.
I'll send it out. So, you know, really appreciate everyone's time. And for those of you who joined in the live session, thank you for your participation. And those of you who are watching, really glad that you tuned in, and looking forward to seeing you next time for our Founders Take. We have quite a few in November, and tend to have one at least every 2 weeks. So to learn more, www.linerun.co. But until then, we'll see everyone around.